سجلت تقدم ملحوظ على صعيد البنية التحتية والبنية الأساسية للتعلم الإلكتروني، وأيضا على صعيد إعداد النظم والبرمجيات وإعداد متطلبات التعلم الإلكتروني من جوانب مختلفة. وأنا أعتقد أنه الكويت ومنطقة الخليج قطعت شوط كبير في هذا المجال، وأيضا يعود ذلك إلى كثير من المؤسسات الدولة، ومنها المركز الاقليمي لتطوير البرمجيات التعليمية اللي أنشئ بمبادرة دولية وبدعم من الصندوق العربي وبالتعاون مع حكومة دولة الكويت كمؤسسة متخصصة في هذا المجال. واستطاع المركز من تنفيذ العديد من المشاريع، ليس فقط في الكويت وفي مختلف مراحل التعليم في الكويت، وإنما كذلك في مختلف دول الخليج، دول مجلس التعاون، وفي عدد من الدول العربية، ومشاريع أصبحت متقدمة. وأنا أعتقد إحنا الآن الرهان الأساسي في التنمية الاقتصادية أو في التنمية المجتمعية تعتمد على قدرتنا في خلق مجتمع معرفة قادر وفايبل أن يدعم جهودنا نحو التقدم، وهذا يرتكز في الأساس على استخدام معطيات التقنيات الحديثة في التعليم وتطوير وسائل التعليم ومناهجه من خلال التقنيات الحديثة. الجلسة الأولى راح نتحدث فيها أو يتحدثون فيها المشاركين حول موضوع إدارة عملية التعلم الإلكتروني وتأثيراتها الاجتماعية والتقنية. بطبيعة الحال المتحدث الرئيسي هو بروفيسور فريتز بانيكوك، هو رئيس جامعة أثاباسكا في كندا. وبروفيسور بانيكوك أحد أشهر رواد التعليم والتعليم الحديث، وخبرته كبيرة في هذا المجال، إضافة إلى خبرته التربوية المتعددة والمتنوعة في العديد من المؤسسات الأكاديمية والجامعات المرموقة. ولذلك أنا أعتقد أنه المدخل مع بروفيسور بانيكوك الآن راح يشكل بالنسبة لنا في الكينوت سبيتش اللي راح يلغيه مدخل مهم ومفيد جدا لوضع أرضية جيدة للحوار لاحقا بعد ما ننتهي أيضا من الورقتين التاليتين. رحب ببروفيسور بانيكوك وندعو لإلغاء الكينوت سبيتش. تفضل.
Well, thank you very much. I will work from the podium here so I can move my slides forward. First of all, thank you very, very much for the kind invitation to address this body. It's indeed a great privilege, both as President of Athabasca University and as President of the International Council of Distance Education, which is affiliated with UNESCO and is dealing with the massification of learning, particularly through and distance learning. Well, about Athabasca University, what we're doing now is we're trying to move the university, and we've just been allocated $20 million Canadian to complete the task, is to move it from a print environment to an environment that is entirely E. So over the last 2 years, we've had to take 843 courses in 70 different programs and move them all into a digital environment. And when you do that, what's really, really important is to make absolutely certain that you have planned it well. It's 1,500 staff, 40,000 students who have to be moved from one environment into another. So it's like a major project. It's equivalent to building a building of twice or three times that value. Well, what did we learn from moving the university from print to digital? Well, the first thing we found out was that you will have challenges of the traditional institution. And you'll have those challenges because the paradigm of learning, the paradigm of power, and the paradigm of structure changes. For example, you have teams now of people building a course. It isn't a professor in a classroom, it's maybe a dozen people working together. So then, who has the power in the course? Is it the professor who knows the content, or is it the educational specialist who will tell the professor, well, perhaps if you structured the learning slightly differently, you'd have a much better outcome. Well, in the old days, as you know, professor is king in his classroom. But now, in the virtual classroom, there are many, many, many kings. And that does cause problems, ultimately. It will cause problems in university governance. In Canada, we're all bicameral. That is, we have a board of governors that runs basically the institution as a whole. But we have an academic council, which are the academics. The academics still have power in that council. So ultimately, structures will have to change. The other thing that we found is when we're dealing with all of these issues, that there are some very, very key issues that come up that will change your university if you move to a digital environment, to an online environment. First, your cost structures change. And when your cost structures change, your power structure change, because someone who used to have money may no longer have money. And that can be quite serious. The other big movement is how much of the material on the internet should you incorporate in your lessons. There's a great movement in the world today for open education resources. There are about 2 million open education resources available for use. They're of variable quality. Some are good, some are bad. Which one should you use to reduce your cost structures? Which one should you invent yourselves? The most important thing to remember when you use OERs, or open educational resources, is that the bulk of them are invented and built in the north. The minority are in the south. So you get a very strong cultural skew if you're not careful. The other big issue in digital resources is the whole issue of copyright. At least it certainly is in Canada. Because you can move your print materials to one digital form, but if you want to migrate them to the next generation of electronic format, and generations change about once a year, I swear sometimes, you have to pay copyright fees again. So you could, in fact, put yourself into a very expensive environment if you're not careful. The regulatory environment, we found out, is based for traditional universities for the most part, everywhere. So if you're a digital university, you have a different regulatory need, but the same regulatory environment. And when you think about it, that can cause serious problems. You also, as I mentioned, governance structures which may not work. You have also accountability structures which may not be suited to digital environments. Well, so what did we do, or what have I been doing at Athabasca University and in the International Council of Distance Ed? We're beginning to look at university structures, or what we call the university value chain. That is, what are all the little bits that make a university? How can you disaggregate that value chain, and how can you rebuild that value chain for a digital environment? Because I would argue what really matters are the learning outcomes of the experience for the student and the validation of those outcomes. Everything else is largely based on tradition. Well, I won't go into great detail because there's about 100+ elements in the university value chain, but I will go to some of the elements. The first is registration. Well, everybody has a registry office. Every university has a registry office. But what should a registry office in a digital university do? Well, maybe it should be the place where the student's entire learning needs are first outlined and then placed on a permanent file there. and then you follow them through their life of learning. That would be a different structure. At our university, we give what's called prior learning assessment. For example, if you've been doing accounting for 5-10 years, you decide to take accounting at our university, should you have to take all of that learning all over again, or should we have a person who can say, well, yes, you've learned this module and that module and that module, but you still have to experience that module. Well, all of those portfolios students submit can be held in the registry. Now then you come to the next question. If there are, in the province of Alberta, there are 22 post-secondary institutions, and we allow the movement of learning from one institution to another. So should one institution keep the registry, or should the government keep the registry for 22 students? Well, there's all sorts of debates on that are happening. So registries may change over time when you move to a digital environment. I believe they are already moving that way. In Canada, they certainly are beginning to move in that way, inch by inch, but it will mean a profound change for universities. The most profound change, of course, is in information. We all know, we all believe to a degree, that the internet provides us access to incredible information, and indeed it does. But it does not provide access to always the best information. The great science journals are still toll-gated. The great humanities journals are still toll-gated. Some countries are moving, and some disciplines are moving 100% online and making their information freely available. In Canada, for the longest time, Canada was known as a country that specialized in communication theory. Well, in the old days, those journals were all in print. Then we saw Canada's position erode because it was no longer being read, because everyone read digitally. So what we decided to do in Canada is we decided to move all of our intellectual and scholarly discourse in the humanities and the social sciences online, making it freely available. Now that is still a process that's ongoing. It'll take another 3 to 4 years to complete. But that's the sort of thing that's happening in digital environments. We're changing structures. At our university, we have an open access press. Every book that our scholars produce is freely available online to anyone who wants to use it. Anyone in the world can download. We've got a book on open and distance learning, for example, that's had over 200,000 downloads in a matter of several months. In the old days, we'd be lucky if we sold 1,000. What also happens when you make it freely available online, your print sales increase. And so you've got a new economic structure happening. And if we ignore the new economic structures of information and the new economic structures of universities, we do so at our peril. The other big project we're involved in right now, and this is happening in the United States, likely happen here, it's certainly happening in Canada. Information is free, we all say, but then why are students still paying up to $1,000 a year in Canadian dollars for textbooks in the sciences? Why can't they be free? And our minister said, indeed, why can't they be free? And can they be free, and can you still make money out of making them free? Well, actually you can. One very, very clever entrepreneur said, the textbooks in engineering will be free. How will he do it? He will put advertising in each of those textbooks from the oil companies that are in Alberta. Well, the oil companies, someone said, well, we don't want our textbooks full of advertising on buy this product. Well, they're not. What the oil companies are saying, we have jobs in these areas. So in fact, by having the oil companies advertise in your textbooks the jobs that are there in the future, it acts as an incentive to students to learn. So it's all, how do you change your thinking about all of this? Not easy, but all possible. Well, the other thing that we're really interested in at our university